Hello, friends. Today I thought I'd like to talk a little bit. I'm just going to kind of freewheel, but some of you may know that recently, just a few days ago, the Vatican came out with a document about the Virgin Mary, saying she's not the co-redemptrix. People were telling me a few weeks ago that they thought the Vatican was going to come out like pro-Sophiology, which I doubted it with this Pope. I'm not a big fan of Leo, just letting you know right now. Didn't like Francis. I started off liking Francis, ended up not liking Francis a lot. But here's the weird thing, right? People ask me, "Are you Catholic?" And certainly, I'm culturally Catholic. I mean, I can't not be Catholic. I have a few problems with the Vatican and the hierarchy and other things as well. And I'll talk to you about that in a second. But I really got turned off during COVID when the Vatican became actually a mouthpiece for the World Economic Forum and for all the rotten things that they did to us during that time. But why am I talking about this? Right? This summer, I'm supposed to give a lecture. I'm starting to prepare for it now because they want to translate it before I get there, so I have to get it handed in much earlier than like the day before the lecture. And they invited me to talk about anything I wanted. It's certainly Eastern Catholic conference in Europe, and I said, "Well, what do you want me to talk about?" Because I could talk about anything. And the people who invited me had read The Submerged Reality and some of my other books, and they knew a lot about me because they figured when they wrote me, I'd be farming, which I was, and I might be too busy, which I probably was because they didn't answer for a few days. But I've been doing some. I wouldn't call it research, but gathering my thoughts and gathering my notes because I've been writing about this for 15 or 20 years now. Actually, this morning I was reading this wonderful book right here. I don't know if the camera turns it the right way. Vladimir Solovyov's. This is not the book I was reading. This is Prophet of the Russian Western Unity by Egbert Munzer, but the other book, where did I put it? It's on here. Oh, here it is, right in front of me. Vladimir Solovyov's really wonderful book. I think it's his most accessible book, and it's still pretty dense. Russia and the Universal Church, right there. It's a really great book. Published in 1948. Yeah, 1948. It was really published in much earlier than that. In the 1870s, I think it was. But in this book, at the end of his book, his book is really about the project at that time for Solovyov was uniting the Eastern and Western churches, and he thought that was that for the salvation of humanity and for the church. When I first got into Solovyov 30 or 40 years ago, I shared that enthusiasm, and that was my project too, which is why we ended up joining the Eastern Catholic Church 30 years ago. But I have since seen how since then I have seen how sausage is made, and it's not pretty. So when people ask me if I'm Catholic, I'm like, yes, culturally Catholic, and deeply appreciative of the Catholic both East and West tradition. Nevertheless, I think I have a problem, and my problem is, and this is a question I've been struggling with. That's probably too strong a word, but dealing with for the last few years. My question is this, and I'll ask you. Is a phenomenological, organic discovery or disclosure of Christianity possible? And what do I mean by that? can, with phenomenology, you behold phenomena, and rather than coming there with preconceived concepts that you project onto the phenomena, you kind of try to push that stuff to the side and let the phenomena speak to you rather than tell the phenomena what it means. And I have had this experience, as we all have, whether it's in the face of nature or the arts or even scripture or liturgy or nature, whatever, love. It's a great example, where the transcendent, the divine, is disclosed through this material. Now, it took me forever to come up with the vocabulary for that, because I think it's a very common experience that happens to us, and we kind of just blow it off, right? But what I think happens there, let me see if I got that from Solovyov. Solovyov has a great way of describing this. I was just reading this morning. Where'd he go? Here it comes. Yeah. Let me get this. Yeah, here he goes. If through him, through his reason, this is meaning human beings, earth is raised to heaven, through him also, through his activity, the heavens must descend and fill the earth. Through him, all the world outside the Godhead must become a single living body, the complete incarnation of the divine wisdom. And a little further he goes, and its reunion, meaning human beings' reunion with God, though necessarily threefold, nevertheless constitutes only a single divine human being, the incarnate Sophia, whose central and completely personal manifestation is Jesus Christ, whose feminine complement is the Blessed Virgin, and whose universal extension is the Church. Now, I think what Solovyov's doing there is he's a philosopher, right? He's a 19th century philosopher at that. So he wants to label and categorize things, right? He wants to do a kind of taxonomy of what's going on. And this is really before phenomenology. And what happens with phenomenology, and I wonder if he knew much about Goethe, that these things he's talking about here are disclosed to you. Now, the thing is, this is what Solovyov did, and this is what theology does, is it seeks right away to fit the experience that one has through the phenomenological disclosure of whatever it happens to be into the kind of system of categorization available. So this is like, or we could say theology, right, or philosophy. So let's see. And what happens here with this disclosure of the between, or the Sophiological, or Sophia, is there's not really an available category for that in received theology. Much later, not until the 20th century, really did some theologians following Solovyov, like Sergei Bulgakov among them, Louis Boyer, and other. You even see it in Thomas Merton, more recent theologian. But the tradition doesn't have a place for that. So both East and West, this insight is kind of considered heretical, which is why when I got the email from those people, I didn't know what it was, and I thought they're going to call me a heretic. I'm in trouble, so I didn't look at it for 3 days. Too funny. So we're in a quandary right now, right? Now, here's the thing. So even for me, I have to couch these insights that I receive into a language people can understand. Now, the thing is, and I'm trying to do it, I guess, without being too crazy. You're trying to tell somebody what you've experienced, but you have to use their language, or language that they can understand. And in you can say in Scripture, even we can stick with Judeo-Christian scriptures, there are ample places where Sophia is disclosed as a divine person. Foremost is Proverbs 8, where Sophia is described. She speaks, right, and it's beautiful poetry. And she speaks that she was present at the creation of all things, right? I was there with him at the beginning, before all things, right? And now the tradition, and Solovyov points this out, the tradition, all it had was the Greek tradition, Greek philosophical tradition, that Neoplatonic tradition even, that connected the Logos and Sophia, so that they were the same thing, two words for the same thing. And Soloviev points out that that's kind of just a Greek thing, and that's the problem with the received tradition, right? Is you can't see them as separate. And he even does that in the definition I read for you. He wants to, he feels like, without, so he doesn't get called a heretic, he has to associate Sophia also with Christ. And I get that, and I don't exactly know how it all works out, but I do think that's what he's doing there. He's trying to fit this new insight, into a tradition. So that's problematic, but that's usually what happens is the people who have this insight, they get called heretics right now, right away. So so I think it's important to really ask that question: is a phenomenological disclosure of Christianity possible? And I think you see this in, my wife and I were just talking about this the other day, how if you look through English and European, Irish history, where these folk religious practices, you can call it the pagan practices that were adopted by the church as it spread to those parts. It's not that they did that as a propaganda. I think what happened is the people who, for instance, were having St. John, having fires at the summer solstice, that they easily could see that in honor of St. John the Baptist, because as St. John says in the Gospel, I must increase while he must decrease, or I must decrease while he must increase, which is what happens at the summer solstice. The sun decreases, and then we're getting toward Christmas right now, right? And then the birth of the Son, right? Or the Son of God. Son, the pun on son, right? Now, I don't think that's a Christian appropriation. I think that's two traditions coming in together and recognizing the truth that was disclosed to them in precisely this way I'm talking about, this organic way that it discloses to you. Now, the problem, I think, in the Catholic Church in particular, but in churches in general, Protestant churches, not even a question, except for the Anglicans, is that the farther the liturgical year has been distanced from the agricultural year, the more it's like we've wandered into the wasteland, where we're in it's like a dead zone. It's like a place where we have to search for the Holy Grail because everything is dying. And I think that's really, it's an accurate description of the place where we are right now. We're lost in the wilderness. And I think, in the Grail stories, we have to find the Grail, right? It will restore us. And I think that's the task before us right now is, how do we find it again? Well, how do we find what we have lost? And of course, if you think about the Grail as the chalice of the Last Supper, it's significant. What have we lost? We've lost the chalice. We've lost the thing that connects heaven and earth, right? And I think it's absolutely valid insight and concern. But I don't think it's going to happen through the accustomed trails. And if in Arthurian Grail literature, the hero does not find it by following the same paths everybody else followed. You have to find a different path into the wilderness. And I think, and that's part of the appeal for me, like the even if it's half mythical, the Celtic church or the Irish church of ancient times, which seems, is it pagan, is it Christian? And I think that's how it's supposed to be, because it was a church in the wilderness, far away from the power structures. And it discovered, and I think you see this in certain Native American cultures. And my friend Matthew Milliner, want to check out his books. Matthew Milliner also sees in Native American culture, in pockets of it, not universal, this also an organic discovery of what we could call the Christian truth. And by the Christian truth, I don't necessarily mean the Catholic Church or the Orthodox Church or certainly not the Protestant Church, right? But this is disclosed through the arts, through the beautiful, through the true, going back to the transcendentals, the good, the true, and the beautiful. That's where it's disclosed. And for me, finding that language of Sophia as the metaxu, or the between, the thing that's both participates in creation and the spiritual world. It's kind of a conduit, connecting those two, this connective tissue that, and I think if we talk in terms of Proverbs 8, which I mentioned earlier, where Sophia participates with the creation, with God, but also in Genesis, where God's in Genesis 1 or 2, where God says, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." And it says, "Male and female created he them." Now, who's he talking to? Let us. He's talking to himself. God, maybe you need to talk to somebody. Well, in this case, I actually got this from an Orthodox theologian who had been a Catholic theologian. He converted. Alexis Mintzbrugge, I think his name is pronounced. And he said, no, what was happening there is God is talking to Sophia. Let us make man in our image. So that really gives you a whole different take on Christian anthropology, doesn't it? And of course, the other place in Scripture where this becomes very obvious is at the incarnation of Jesus in St. Luke's Gospel, where the Virgin Mary, they always say her yes, but not just her yes, but her being. She made God, if you're a Christian, you believe this, God palpable to the senses. Literally palpable to the senses. And this is what, taste and see how good the Lord is, right? And the Sophianic in creation is also what makes God palpable to the senses. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to me. And so, to conclude, when the Pope got into all this, Mary's not the co-redemptrix nonsense. I told a friend of mine on the phone, texting yesterday, she got highly pissed. She's very, very Catholic. She was highly pissed, and she didn't heard about the document that came out, and she's like, I'm going to read this right now, and she was pissed. And especially since, I think, was it Pope Benedict's, declared Mary the co-redemptrix, or co-mediatrix. And the thing is, even that, you're just getting into concepts, right? Don't get stuck on the concepts. Let the world speak to you, right? Or let the phenomena speak to you. And I think if you do, and it doesn't happen, you can't just force it to happen. But we all have this where, you're beholding something, and it's like the universe opens up. I remember several times in my life where this happened through music, nature, poetry, scripture, and it just opens up, and it's Hans Urs von Balthasar, the Catholic theologian, who's really a wonderful theologian, he calls it splendor. There's a shining that comes through it, and it's like you sense something shining from the spiritual world into the creation, or through the creation is probably a better way to put it, and into you, right? So anyway, those are my kind of rambling thoughts, and I haven't had a chance to do one of these videos in a while. I've been so darn busy. So let me know what you think. I would love to hear your thoughts about this, because I think going forward, as Slavoj Žižek once wrote, actually, that Christianity will have to die in order, like its founder, to be born again. And I think, in a way, we're at that stage. I hate to say it, but it's true. All right, so with that, I will bid you adieu. You can see I'm in my living room this week because we got snow and it's cold and damp, and I wanted to sit near the fire, which is over there. There it is there. Hi, fire. All right, so with that, I will bid you adieu and see you next time. God bless.